I'm thrilled to welcome my guest this week. He's a really good friend of mine, and I've known him for a long time. He is a consciousness development facilitator who runs a community where he encourages participants to go through the journey of self exploration and understand themselves better by studying themselves and their repetitive patterns. I'm happy to welcome my friend Tio.
Hey
Hey, Tio.
Sushil, thanks for the introduction, and I'll speak a bit more about that soon, but thanks for having me here. So we are doing a collaboration podcast for Heal with Sushil and my own podcast, which is the Infinite Zero Experience.
Mhm.
And I wanted to explore a specific topic with you, which you were discussing in the last session that we had, which was about FOMO. Like specifically, like you have been talking a lot about FOMO in your life. It's a thing that affects you greatly, and I think it affects everyone to some extent. I have it also. It doesn't control me as much, but it's definitely something I deal with, and I think a lot of people are dealing with. And I think we had a very interesting discussion, which I would like to explore further today.
Yeah, and I definitely struggle with FOMO sometimes because I am in a transition in my life, going from one career to another. So there's this theme of, have I closed the door that was right for me, whether it's romantic relationships, whether it's a job, whether it's a career, whether it's a trade. It's basically showing up in a lot of themes of my life, and I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in this. A lot of people go through this where they can go through crippling indecision sometimes because they don't want to close a door because of what they might be giving up on. So yeah, I would love to discuss a lot about that, and also hear what your take on it is as well.
Funnily enough, your door opened literally while you were talking.
Yeah, because my cat came in, so
But without us being able to see the cat, it just looks so synchronous to the words that we are using. But just to speak a bit more about what I do, like you said consciousness development facilitator. This is not a very common term or title for someone for the work that someone is doing. So I just want to explore that a bit more, like what does it mean to develop your consciousness? From my point of view, consciousness has many levels. One is the natural level that we are born with, and that we gradually, grow in life through time or age or whatever you want to call it. But this natural progression usually has a very specific limit on what capabilities we can have. And of course, along with that comes the unconscious, which is very powerful too. So one of the things I do, I call it unschooling the unconscious, which is that basically like our consciousness and our unconscious has been schooled or educated throughout our life. We've been given a lot of programs and scripts, and we are running these programs and scripts all the time without knowing it. And basically, part of the work is unschooling ourselves or unschooling our unconscious so that we become more free and we can decide which programs we want to have, which scripts we want to be running, to be more in control of our decisions, basically. And the other thing is also development, right? Like basically we are capable of a lot of things that can only come through effort and will, which will not come automatically. Like there are certain things which we will just through growing up we will develop automatically. But just like you have bodybuilding or going to the gym or developing stamina or something, you will have your natural stamina, you will have your natural body, and then when you go to the gym you can develop that much further. You can be exercising and developing your stamina much further. The same goes with consciousness. There are many things that will only come through development, and this is what we call higher consciousness. And so consciousness development is developing these higher functions.
of course. And I noticed that how do you get participants for your community? Do you do they come by themselves, or how do you convince someone who, when you say something like we're not in control of our actions, or if we say that most of our decisions are unconscious, when this theme came up in the even in the ayahuasca retreat, I think people were like, no, I'm in control of my consciousness, I am in charge of every decision, not anyone is telling me. So how do you tell someone like that that is not true, or if that is not your target audience?
Well, I generally give, and the door closes.
Yeah.
I generally give workshops. This has till now, workshops and word of mouth have been my two ways in which people join the work that I do. But I don't try to convince people ever, like because I think that is pretty uh
Cult like.
like I'm not talking more in the cult sense. Like, I don't think you can actually convince someone. The only thing you can help them to do is to realize their current state of consciousness. So basically what I will do is give certain exercises to make them realize how much they're not in control of their lives. And like, of course, explaining some things and giving some exercises. Once people start practicing these, they start realizing that they have a very, very low level of consciousness, or we can say almost that they have no real consciousness. What they have is automation, or these programs or these scripts which keep them going automatically without actually really deciding anything in their life. All the decisions are pre-programmed, basically. So yeah, I don't really convince people, but I do give exercises that help them to realize. And then if they realize this, and if they want to do something about it, then of course we start working together. But uh, it's not something for everyone. Like, this work is not for the many; it's for the few. And it's not because I am discriminating or I am being selective or something. Like, I am actually open to working with everyone, but the reality is that it's not that the teaching is rejecting the student, it's the student that is rejecting the teaching. And my opinion is that this happens because uh, not because the teaching is not effective that they are rejecting it, is that the teaching is too effective and too powerful, and most people are not ready for something like this. Most people are still too addicted to their programs, they are suffering, and they want to stay in that state. So, one other way that I phrase my work is that I help people break the addiction to suffering.
Hmm.
And only people who are ready to break an addiction can actually do this work. The same with any kind of rehab or anything. You cannot, not everyone is ready to go to rehab. Only someone who is truly ready to do the work of breaking the addiction can go to a rehab. So we can call this like a rehab for suffering, but like, it's not a traditional rehab, so to speak.
Yeah, a lot of things came out there. One was a lot of parallels to the Matrix, where people are plugged into this certain level of life, and then when you lift the veil, and you see the cockroaches under where they're hiding and everything, people are like, I don't want to see this, I want to go back. Almost like the guy Cypher from the movie Matrix. He was removed from his life, and then he's like, I don't want this, I preferred the same food the way it tasted, even if it is fake, I liked it and I would like to forget. And another thing that seems.
Just to add to that, like, what the latest Matrix movie emphasizes is that most people, even when they have been given the key to be free, absolutely do not want it. Most people are opting in to the illusion. And this is, like, concurring with what I said before, is that this work is not for the many, it's for the few. And why it is that way, it's not for me or you or some specific person or group of people to decide. Is just how this reality is. That's what I can say for now. in short,
Definitely. I mean, the last few years have been almost like very wild. If you notice, time has been. I felt like it because my own personal reality plus like what is happening on a global level. It's just been crazy. Almost like it's a call to action for a lot of people.
Mhm.
And I still see people are like, I mean, I see this theme where people are like, I just wanted to go back to the way it was before the pandemic. I
Mhm.
wish world was back to what it was before the pandemic.
Mhm.
And that has a lot of parallels with what you was just saying right now.
Yeah, the way so a lot of my teachings are based on the fourth way of consciousness, which is a system developed by Gurdjieff, who was a mystic in the early 1900s. And one of the way he phrases this particular aspect is nostalgia is one of the greatest enemies of people who want to develop consciousness. Because a lot
Yeah.
of people, and like South Park has this whole season dedicated to like these member berries. People are in this constant craving of things being back to the way they were, because not actually because things were great before. Things were not as bad as they are now. Like, that's the only difference. Is that things are so much more fucked up now that people are like, oh, it was not so bad before, so it was better, so let me go back to that. But when you actually go back to that, you realize even that was pretty fucked up, and then you want to go back further. So it's never actually been great. But
Yeah. And
that's why the nostalgia is such a big enemy, is because what you're craving is not even good. It's just better than the shit that we have right now.
yeah, for sure. And I think what happens is that with nostalgia, you only see the highlights package, right? You don't see all of
Exactly.
the
Mhm.
shitty aspects of it, or like the suffering, the pain, and that went to it. And you're always trying to recreate. I think this came up in one of the discussion. You're always trying to recreate the original event that happened, like your
Mhm.
first cigarette or your first joint, or I think you mentioned it like a few months ago. But and that's never going to happen. And then you realize that when you're back in it and like, oh, this sucks just as bad. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, this is the thing, is that people are constantly seeking an escape from their suffering. Either it's through nostalgia, or it's through drugs or television or some form of escape. And all the escapes they're choosing basically just create more suffering, but they don't realize it. For some moments, they convince themselves that they're not suffering as much, but it's just like a hypnosis that they create for themselves that this is not suffering. But in reality, if they are in contact with their feelings, right, this is the thing, is that most people are not in contact with their feelings. But if they get in contact with their feelings, they will realize that they are in perpetual suffering. And only when people realize this will they have the right motivation to do the work that is required. Until they have this realization that their life is full of suffering, there will be no real motivation to break out of it, because they will constantly keep thinking there is a way to escape it. But the only way to escape it is to face it and to do the work and to face the pain and to heal. And that requires effort. It's not going to happen through medicine. It's not going to happen through some magic pill. It takes time. It takes work. It takes determination, which most people are not willing to commit to.
I mean, forget most people. I would say that I've been doing this for roughly 3 years. And there are definitely days when I just want to give up because
Mhm.
being, when you actually remove your crutches, when you remove everything, when you just throw out all the wiring and everything, and you have to just spend time with yourself and nothing else, it can be very uncomfortable, can be
Mhm.
extremely uncomfortable. And I see the appeal towards like numbing that, towards like smoking pot, or towards like drinking, or towards like watching too much TV. I see the appeal because when you are left like with your unfiltered thoughts, or everything that you are, or everything that you hate about yourself, it can be very overwhelming at times.
Yeah, but like I have said this before in the sessions, is that you don't take away all the crutches all at once because of this very reason. Like we ideally we want to go slow, but a lot of people are not even like they want everything to be fast. So then they will go for these shortcuts and remove all the crutches, and then the suffering becomes overwhelming, and then they're back to a worse place usually. So the thing is accepting that this is a gradual process and to go slow and to slowly work on each crutch and develop the real thing that the crutch has been supporting. Like, so whatever disability you have been supporting with the crutch needs to be healed before you can take the crutch away. This is the thing, is that even in modern psychotherapy, a lot of it focuses on coping mechanisms, whereas the reality is healing. And they talk about treatment of the disorder, but what that really means is basically treating the surface level symptom, and a lot of times it's happening through medication. But the only real treatment is to heal the wounds that are very painful, that are causing all these manifestations of anxiety, depression, whatever it is. Like these are the two most common today, but there's so many more symptoms that are all being caused, and even physical health symptoms like overeating, undereating, whatever it is. The people don't realize how many symptoms are manifestations of wounds that we've been carrying for a lifetime. And what most people don't realize is that actually there is a way to heal this and to stop carrying the wounds, and that is much faster than trying to escape them and just heal the surface.
Yeah, and that's perfect, because the same theme came up in episode 14 as well. And I was talking to a craniosacral doctor, and he was talking about the same thing, that he used to be a physician, and his journey was such that he was also treating the symptoms initially. Like he would provide medication and treat the body as if it's an isolated container which has like some reactions, and you give it medication and it gets better or worse. But then he started realizing that modern medicine doesn't have a definition for healing. It doesn't exist. They are
It's
always
coping.
like
It's only about coping.
Yeah.
But it's like modern psychotherapy generally, like I'm not saying all therapists are there. There are some very good therapists who can help you with real healing, but the general average therapy is about coping and fitting into the toxic society. This is the thing, is that it's not even telling you that the world is fucked up and you should go and do something different. It's like, how can I fit you and make you another cog in this system?
Oh yeah, it actually, for those who have not seen the fourth Matrix movie, and a lot of people don't like it, I think it's very similar to what like the therapist is doing in that movie. And I don't know if there's an unconscious conflict of interest, like saying that if a therapist rehabilitates someone and they get better, then they won't be dependent on the therapist anymore, right? I'm not saying therapists do it consciously, but there could be like that.
Oh, I think there are many therapists who, if they are struggling for clients, will unconsciously not want their existing clients to heal us because this is all they have. So they need to keep the cycle going. So a lot of times therapists and patients enter into a toxic codependency. And like, I don't know why we are discussing all of this. It's very interesting to me, obviously, but
No, of course.
But yeah, like all of this for me is connected to suffering. And the reality is that modern psychotherapy doesn't understand suffering, and it doesn't really understand humans. It's just very superficial, trying to fit people into the system in whatever way possible, whether it's through medication, coping mechanisms, or whatever it is. But I think the message I want to give is that this is just one thing. Even though it's very popular, it's one thing, but there are other solutions available. For the ones who are really looking for it, you can heal your wounds. You can stop suffering. Like, suffering is not mandatory. This is something most people don't know. Most people think that suffering is just part of life, but it's not true. Suffering is part of life when you have not done anything to stop that. And this doesn't mean so. What happens generally is that New Age spirituality takes the polarized view of this. It's like, oh, suffering is not mandatory, everything is love and light. And I'm not saying this. For me, there is a middle ground, which is pain is a reality. Pain is part of life, but pain doesn't imply suffering. Suffering is optional. Pain will always be there in life. You will always have painful experiences. If you're really living life, you're going to have pain, but you can learn to deal with pain, and you do not need to add suffering to the pain. And this doesn't mean everything will be love and light. There will be love, there will be light, but there will also be pain and there will also be darkness. What we can exclude is suffering, or at least unnecessary suffering. There may be some suffering which is just again part of life, but I think in modern culture, there's way too much unnecessary suffering just because people don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah, and I know why we are talking about this. It is going to segue into our topic of FOMO because I feel like FOMO is one of the greatest forms of suffering because people are living in this flipped reality where they're not, I mean, not people, I mean me myself. I'm not going to say people because it seems like I'm, as you say, on some top of the mountain and I've like transcended all this. But it's almost this flipped reality, which is like this moment right here, right now I'm talking to you, this is my present moment. But then I'm thinking of something else. That is my mechanism of suffering. I'm like, oh, I miss smoking a joint, or I miss a cigarette, or some level of I wish I was living in Hawaii, or there's always like this something is missing,
Mhm.
or like it's. I was talking about this with someone, and I said that we are not Homo sapiens, we are FOMO sapiens. But there's
Mhm.
always this theme that how can I make this present moment better, or there is this this one thing which I'm not doing right now, which is going to make me feel better, or I'm missing out on this one thing which is not in my life right now, and that amplifies suffering a lot. So I think everything that we spoke so far fits very well into that.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think FOMO has like two things. One is uh this, like what am I missing out on, the obvious FOMO, but it's also the regret which we spoke about a lot of, if I take this one path, what are all these other paths that I am not going to get to explore? And what that usually creates is this paralysis, or like there's so many terms for it, like decision paralysis or analysis paralysis, where people just keep analyzing all the possibilities but never make a choice or never take any action. And we have discussed this a lot in the past, but I think what was most interesting coming out of our last discussion was, you know, uh, consciously grieving the lost paths, which is something, well, I had not really heard about before. And I had, it was a spontaneous solution while you were having the discussion. So why don't you talk more about that from your perspective?
Actually, I thought we could do something interesting. Maybe you
Uh-huh.
could lead us through a guided mini session where you where you
Sure.
consciously let go of something. Like what is a path that I'll be your test subject for the lack
Uh-huh.
of test subjects, but maybe we could walk through what like themes, or
Mhm.
what themes are coming up when you actually let go of, what is holding someone like me back.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Share what FOMO you experience.
I mean, there's a lot. I I'm a recovering pothead, and like I think about like one of the reasons I give, like, the world sucks. Why can't I just be high all the time? Is like I have like FOMO about wanting to go back, and I was in a position where I was high 24/7, and that's one of my FOMOs. The other is, maybe we could work with that. The other one is that I used to work in a very high-paying job and tech job, and everything was stable. And in terms of, I was getting a paycheck every 2 weeks and was getting like the hamster wheel, equivalent of whatever it was in my own life. And I feel like now that I'm doing my own thing, I kind of always have this FOMO, like, oh, did I make a mistake and did I close the wrong door? Same with relationships. Like I was in a relationship with someone, and I closed that door, and again like, oh, was this person the right one? Have I lost my shot? So have I lost my shot? Have I closed the wrong door? Is always what I'm feeling.
I think people don't consider missed opportunities as something that is a real psychological loss. And as with any loss, like even if it's the loss of a person in your life, like somebody dies, there is a grieving process that's associated with it. And one of the things that came out of our last discussion is that things that happen purely in the psychological domain can be very real for the mind. It doesn't matter whether it's actually happened in your reality or not, but if it's happened in the mental reality, it's still very real to the mind, and the mind can still suffer for that. And this is what we need to understand, is that psychological loss is equally a loss that needs the whole grieving process. So anything you take, like if it's a relationship, or you went on a few dates and you're like, am I with the right person or not? Should I continue being with them or not? Or like while you're dating someone, another person comes along, like, oh, should I go with this person or this person? Then a third person comes along. So there's so many choices. We are living in a world that is abundant with choices. Like, this is also something that our ancestors did not have. Our ancestors lived with scarcity. Our ancestors lived with very minimal options. And with the advancement of the industrial age, the tech age, there's just so many options that our minds are not equipped to deal with so many options. And that's another reason FOMO has become so popular is because of this buffet of options that we are being given for every single thing. Whether it's dating, you have like not just thousands of options on one app, you have hundreds of apps with thousands of options. So which app do I pick? Which is the right app to spend my time on? Or like whether it's social media, like, and you're a creator, so should I spend my time building this social media profile or that social media profile, or where do I put my energy? The thing is, people think that there is such a thing as the best path. And I think this is what creates a lot of suffering, is this thing of best. First, in my opinion, best is completely relative, and best can never be known beforehand. We never know which path is going to bring you what opportunities. And having that realization alone is very big.
Yeah. And I think it's a millennial problem, or I was discussing this on with you. It started with millennials because we didn't have like this kind of technology when we were like in our initial years. And then suddenly it just went crazy, like the exact 180. And you're right, like so many options. Yesterday I was spending so much time trying to pick a new mattress. you know, it's like even it is something so shouldn't take so much time, but everything, it's like, if you've seen the Good Place, the listeners, if you've seen the Good Place, there's this character who I very much identify with, Chidi, and he doesn't make any decisions because of how to optimize it, or what is the optimal path of making that decision. And it is definitely a problem that we face, millennials, Gen Z, and it's getting exacerbated with each
Mhm.
passing generation because they are exposed to technology so early. And there's always like a better reel, there's always a better TikTok video, there is something that is always capturing our attention. And so, yeah, coming back to the previous question, how do you grieve, or how can, like, if you can give one
Yeah,
guided example
before
of.
going into that, I think it's very interesting. Like we will go to that too, but I think it's very interesting to realize that when you accept that there is no best path, you start realizing that any path can be a great path. And this is where you start taking the power away from the circumstances and start taking the power back to your inner self and your creativity and your resources. Is how can I make the chosen path great?
Hmm.
It's a completely flipped perspective from how will this path be the best for me? Will it give me the best circumstances to flourish versus whatever path I take, I can make it great. I think if you start thinking in that way, you have control over a lot more things.
No, definitely. And I'm moving to a new city, Montreal, and a lot of moving, I don't know why it brings up such so many difficult themes in your life. I don't know, people will just say just move and it's done with, but for me it's almost like the FOMO comes up really strong, and I feel like, oh, I have abandoned some other path. And
Mhm.
and then I start thinking about all of the things that can go wrong with it. And I mean, that's my whatever program, where I'm always like thinking of a catastrophic thing that could happen when I move there. But this is a much better outlook to have, like, pick a path and see how you can make it the best path, or not the best, or how can you bring your own creativity, how can you bring your own authentic form of expression to make this into a life which is worth living. And
Mhm.
that's a much healthier attitude to have.
Yeah, yeah. Because finally, we have to recognize that circumstances can only give us a certain degree of opportunity. But what most people don't realize is how much power they have to create opportunities and to use the opportunities that are being given to them. This is the other thing, right? Is that a lot of people are regretting these missed opportunities without realizing that they're not even doing anything with the opportunities that they're being given. And like that's the other thing that happens with this decision paralysis, is that you want the best and you end up doing nothing at all.
Mm.
Wasting so much time in choosing the best path that you take no path and you do nothing, and you not only don't get the best, you get the worst, because the worst is just being stuck where you are.
Yeah, and no one is coming. No one is coming to make that decision for you. No one is, and even if you give your power to someone else to make the decision, then you resent that other person.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you resent them and you get to blame them, and then you're back to square one because that decision is likely not going to be the best one, whatever best means. And then you'll be back to the thing, oh, now I have to either make the decision myself or find someone else to make the decision for me, a new third person. But this is very interesting, is that like this is the victim mindset, is not taking ownership for your decisions, your responsibilities. And I think it's extremely exacerbated in specific cultures where decisions are left to the parents, and it's especially discouraged for children to make decisions, which is, I think, like especially in Asian cultures it's very prominent, but I think there are many global cultures that have this, where the family or the parent makes the decision for you, and then when you grow up you have no idea how to make a decision. So, part of consciousness development, we can say, is learning to make decisions. And learning to make decisions happens by learning to grieve lost parts. So we can come back to that now. Which is, how do you grieve a lost part? Is realizing that what is lost, and you cannot have everything. Like this idea, like I can have everything leads to you having nothing. So like, the mature, the adult way of thinking is, let me have something instead of having nothing or everything. Let me have something. And what I lose, I lose. It's painful. I would love to have that, but I know that I cannot have that. So let me go down this path and have what I can have. And the thing is also, it's not always lost forever. Some things you may lose forever because there are, opportunities that are only available for a certain time. Like you can't have all the 10 apartments that you're looking at. You can only have one of them right now. But like a lot of opportunities are not lost for life. Like if you're choosing career paths and you're like, should I be a musician or should I be a dancer or should I be a physicist? If these are your three options, it doesn't mean that you can't be all three in your entire lifetime. Realizing that you have time later to do several things is also realizing your multidimensional nature, is that I can do one thing now, but I can also do more things later. So prioritizing, deciding what I should do now can also help with FOMO.
I think ADHD also comes into the picture, or like, I don't know, if neurodiversity in terms of, I think that the problem with ADHD, or, that multipotentialite tendency, is that you do believe that you can do everything and
Mhm.
you can be like, you can achieve everything, or, you're like, have limitless, and, and you're right, like toxic positivity will say that, oh, you're limitless, you're like some God's gift to humanity, and you can do everything. But you're right, like it's very difficult to make peace with the fact. And I struggle with that sometimes because I feel like I have a lot of projects going on, and for some amount of time I'm able to do them very well, and like it's almost like I feel really good about them and everything. And then after some time, I realize that I have taken on too much,
Mhm.
and I can't do this in an effective way. And then I feel like a complete failure, and there's no grieving process. It's almost like a blame game, saying that, oh, you're a loser, or like this torturing mindset, or the suffering aspect, saying that, oh, you suck at this is another failed path. And it's always like a lot of baggage that comes with it, which is why I think there should be a healthier grieving process, say, or more supportive
Mhm.
of the inner child, and saying that you tried something and it didn't work, and it's okay. It's not the end of the world. There are like a lot of things you can do, and that's what has been missing from my own life, is what I've noticed.
Yeah, like the other thing you're discussing during the session is that the one who is in paralysis, one way of looking at it is that the one who is in paralysis is the inner child. And how we can help ourselves is to separate ourselves into two or three different parts. So you have the adult, you have the parent within you, and you have the child. And you can parent this child and coach them into making a decision and help them with failure, help them with loss, help them with mistakes. You don't have to parent your inner child the same way you were parented when you were a child. You can develop new parenting strategies that are healthier, because our parents did what they could. Our parents also repeated a lot of the things that they went through, and they are repeating them unconsciously because that's all they know what to do. But now, like, if you enter a program like this, like the study of self that we are doing, or some kind of therapy which is actually effective, you will start learning techniques, you will start learning strategies of how to parent yourself in healthier ways. So this is another important realization, is that things don't have to continue the same way that they have always. There are many ways to parent, and even today you can change how your child has been parented. Like your childhood parenting is not necessarily the final outcome. You can reparent your child even today. This is literally what inner child work is to reparent your child today and help them to grow, help them to evolve into healthier adults.
That's amazing, because when I started thinking about like working on my own inner child, and parenting it effectively, that's when a cat or a kitten, a 3-week-old kitten came into my life from nowhere. And I see a lot of parallels in parenting and, making sure that this part of me, or, this kitten is taken care of, or, it just, I love the synchronicity of how that happened, because it was out of nowhere. I was walking on the street and I saw this kitten that needed support. But then actually, when I can flip that on myself and see that it's not only the kitten that's suffering, it's me who is suffering.
Mhm.
There is a very traumatized part of me that is stuck and not able to get through this. It's been a huge revelation in my own life, and wanting to work on that has been very much my intention.
Yeah, it's for me, pets are one of the best teachers and mirrors. Like they show us so much about ourselves. Like sometimes you have a reaction to a pet that is almost like you or your own how your parent reacted to you when you were a child, and suddenly you realize, oh shit, I am my parent. Like this is one of the things most people don't want to acknowledge or accept, is that they are a product of their parents. Even today, no matter what you how much work you have done, there are still aspects of your parents living within you. And if you really want to change that, it takes a lot of work, a lot of conscious effort to change those patterns of behavior. And you can stay in denial for the rest of your life, but that doesn't change the fact.
Does it count as animal testing if you try parenting on pets first?
I well, there are some people who get very cruel with their pets, and it's unfortunate, but also like recognizing that there is no such thing as the perfect parent. Even today, with like this is another thing which creates a lot of suffering for parents, is how to be the perfect parent. And then they enter into this uh probably there is this FOMO around this also. There are like 100 different perfect parenting strategies today. Which one should I pick? Which is the best parenting strategy? Which will make me the best parent and which will give me the best child? What is best here? What is the best child? For some people, the best child is the one who will get the best career. For some people, the best child is the one who will be the most authentic, following their own path. There are so many different parenting methods. So again, in my opinion, there is no such thing as the best parenting method. You pick one and you do the best you can do with it. I think this is what we have to start cultivating, is the attitude that do the best with whatever you're going for.
You're 100% right on the pets are a perfect mirror for us, because I feel now that I am actually providing for another creature or something like that, I realize that how challenging it is, and it's not a walk in the park. And I have a lot of childhood trauma, and I've blamed my parents a lot for it, and the victim mindset was very strong, saying that you are responsible for everything that I am
Mhm.
today. And I started realizing that you should have empathy, because they did the best that they could. They have also been through like suffering, and like post independence India, where they didn't have shit to eat, and like it was just very traumatic. Their own past is traumatic, and you're right, like there is no perfect path. You're going to make mistakes, and you have to own up to that. uh, I think you wrote like a mini book or something called A World Without Mistakes
A
a
world
couple of years
beyond
ago.
mistakes. A world beyond mistakes.
A World Beyond Mistakes. I'm sorry about
Mhm.
that. And I think that spoke about like not having this attitude where if you pick, if you make a decision that is a mistake, or that's the right, there's right and wrong, and you have to go beyond right and wrong and see what lies beyond those polarized outcomes.
Yeah, like one of the subtitle of the book, which is the primary message of the book, is that mistakes are gateways to other realities, which might just be more beautiful. Recognizing that when like a mistake, we can also say it as an intervention from our unconscious or from a higher force or whatever you want to call it, But how do you know that this mistake is not opening up a new path? It's not opening up a door to opportunity. Like when we become fixated on this perfect outcome, then every mistake is like a stab, stabbing us, and it's very painful. But when you start opening your mind and you start realizing a mistake is an opportunity to maybe do something different and learn something more, all of a sudden mistakes are great. Like and I was the latest season of Westworld is out, and I did not want to watch it directly because I've kind of lost contact with it. So I restarted Westworld from season one, and what in the first or second episode, the guy says like the most powerful tool evolution has is mistakes. So
Yeah.
when you start seeing mistakes from that point of view, everything changes. When you start seeing failure from that point of view, everything changes. That failure is not terminal. You only terminally fail when you decide it's the end. But a lot of people have like a parent or an authority figure in their head telling them that the first failure is the end. The first failure means that you have to give up. But success is never found that way. Success is found through getting up after each failure and learning from those mistakes.
I mean, if you grew up in India, there's no room for
Yeah.
mistakes.
Mhm.
There's
There's
no
no
room
room
for
for
failure.
mistakes and there's no room for failure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So coming back to how does one grieve a path that is not taken?
You grieve, you feel the pain of losing out, you feel the pain of missing out, but you keep it bound. You face the pain once. Put a if you want, you can put a time limit around it, or just allow yourself to feel the pain really. But if you do that once very consciously, you will realize that it ends, because what the grieving process ends in acceptance. When you can accept that you're not going to have this, that is the end of the grieving process. And when you begin this exercise, it can be slow and it can take time. Maybe you need an hour to grieve each lost path. Maybe you even need a day, whatever. There's no judgment around how much time you need to grieve a lost path. But the more you do this, right, you will start realizing that you can grieve a lost path in seconds, like just acknowledging, okay, this is not going to happen. I have to move on with my life. It's okay. Like not every lost path needs to be that painful too. Like sometimes it's just saying, okay, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Let me move on and let me keep going. But
I was
there are
I
some
was
lost.
expecting some specifics, or like some maybe guided meditation, or some way to get into that state where you're able to like allow these feelings to come in, or like which would make it easier for the listeners, or just like, yeah.
I at some level, I do hear what you're saying and what you're asking for, but at some level, I also don't want to make it this whole special ritual. Like I want it to be something that's just part of life. Like just feel. Like, why do you need someone to coach you into this feeling? Like, just think about what you're losing out, and automatically the feelings will come. Like, just be
Yeah,
conscious with it.
it can do anything. So I think anyone will have a different process. You can write
Yeah,
about it, you can
yeah.
paint about it, you can.
Yeah, you can be journaling, you can be painting. These are great ideas for grieving, or just meditating and sitting and thinking about what you're losing out. But having the focus to go towards acceptance, I think this is the key. Is like you set out with the intention to accept this loss, and then allow the process to unfold the way it does. Maybe you cry, maybe you want to paint, maybe you want to express yourself in a certain way, maybe you want to maybe you need to confront somebody. Whatever your inner guidance tells you is the right way to grieve it, do that. I can give a guided meditation, but honestly, there are so many ways to grieve that maybe even better than any guided meditation that I could give. So I will defer the request.
Fair enough. Thank you. But yeah, so
I think
I think
like just all this information that has come out in this episode, they are very powerful tools. They are very powerful realizations if we can actually digest them and allow ourselves to sit with these realizations, to actually process them. They are powerful tools. Like, just I think just listening to all of this will help to unblock a lot of things.
100%. And you're right. I always have so many insights when I'm editing an episode because I listen to it again. And this time it's a different form of listening because right now I'm listening one on one. But when you listen without having the added task of
Yeah.
being active and being like completely tuned in, I feel like a lot of insights come up. And I think this would be extremely beneficial for a lot of people. Um,
I
yeah,
think even passive listening, in my opinion, is always beneficial when you do it more than once. Because the second or the third time that you're listening to something, like, I'm not saying you have to listen to everything more than once, but if you found some teaching powerful, repetition makes it much more powerful. Because like, we have our unconscious is in layers. So maybe the first lesson unblocks certain layers and gives you a certain level of insight. But the same information, the same tool, the same exercise carries keys for multiple layers of insight. And this is another way to go deeper, is doing something over and over again. Like, I'm not saying repeating it in the same way, but when you're working through something, when you do it a second time, you're unlocking a deeper level of insight. And a third time, usually, like, three is a very good number. If you repeat something three times, you've unlocked many layers of insights already. And it may not be necessary beyond that, but again, that's very individual. But I think definitely more than once. If you find a teaching powerful, to use it to use it more than once.
definitely. Yeah, I'm very grateful that this episode happened and so many great insights came up.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I also enjoyed it a lot. Like, one of the things I say to people, to my students, is uh a lot of the times I am learning from myself. I'm speaking as a teacher, but at the same time that I'm speaking as a teacher, I'm listening to myself as a student. I have several parts within me. I have the student within me that is constantly listening to what I am saying. And so many times I am having realizations from what I am saying. So I am always grateful to have these conversations, and I'm always learning from them too. Like, being a teacher for me is not a destination, it's not an arrival. It's basically a continuation of the journey and going deeper and deeper into the world. So I'm very grateful too.
yeah, and I think something similar came up in a previous episode where someone said that the words that they would keep telling. There was a mountaineer who was about to climb Mount Denali, and he kept he mentioned that he used to give speeches and everything, and he would keep saying certain phrases to people to motivate them. And when he was about to quit, he heard the same things from someone else. And you're right, like in a way, when you listen to yourself or your recordings later, you see that, oh, I said something insightful. It doesn't always have to be someone else, or you mirror someone else, and you learn a lot from yourself and from
Yeah.
others around you. So I'm grateful for that. But before we close, I always ask this question: what is one small change people can bring to their lives that would improve it by 1%?
I cannot guarantee 1%.
I always, when I say 1%, that's like the reaction always, it's like I can't mathematically compute 1%, or I can't.
But
I don't know why I go with 1%, but it's an
no,
arbitrary number.
it's an interesting question, and I think, like, I'm also just being playful and joking about it. But what can someone change? I mean, that there were so many suggestions in this episode.
Mhm.
I would take any one of them. Like, start consciously grieving a lost path. Start there. I think, like, that can make a big difference. 1% less or more, I don't know. But I think it can make a big difference when you start consciously acknowledging what you have lost, even if it's purely psychological.
Definitely. And Theo, thank you so much for your time and for
thank
all
you.
the amazing messages. I can't wait to see how this comes out, like a double collaboration.
I am just going to say that I am pretty certain I'm going to be putting it out there without editing, because I just loved the flow of the entire episode. Like, apart from the initial hiccups, I think it went really well.
Me too. And looking forward to how this comes out. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.